In this video, we'll be looking at cantilever retaining walls, and the example I've got on screen here is really an inflated concrete geometry. I've done it deliberately so we can get a better view on the reinforcement as we're modeling it, but the principles will be the same for, I would imagine, a higher wall, different dimensions. It's just clearer for this tutorial. Also, I don't really have a design in front of me, so I'm just going to assume we've got 20mm bars at 200 spaced along the base in both directions. We've got 16s at 200 in the little nib in front here, or the toe as they call it, and we'll have 16s at 200 in the wall. And I think, whether that be correct or not, it's a tutorial, and it's all about the detailing method. Now, in this video, I'm going to make use of rebar sets. I think it's the preferred workflow. Also, I am going to illustrate um, a method I've successfully used in the past. There are a lot of ways. You've got faces, you've got guidelines, you've got the point input, you've got longitudinal and cross. There's a lot of ways to insert reinforcement in rebar sets into concrete, but I think the optimum for this one will be the point input, purely because if I select the crossing and I click over the shape and I look at it, I've got to select the shape of the bar. And if I want to create a ligature like at the bottom and just split it on these sides to create double L at the bottom, double L at the top, I need to manipulate a lot of those faces to actually achieve that. So it doesn't really make sense. You can use it, but it doesn't really make sense. It's going to take you longer to use the crossing bars than to use the point input. So point input is very similar to what we had in the rebar groups. So what I'll do is I'll click more. I'll go to point input. Make sure that I set my defaults just in case I've had previous settings that I didn't want. So that's gone back to the default. Then I select what I actually want. So what I want to do here is I want to use 20mm main bars. Okay, and I'll just leave the rest of the settings as is for now. So what I'll do is I am going to create a bar shape similar to that of a ligature by just taking the full circle. Now you can already see there, if I just hover over the shape of that bar, um, if we had to use the crossing bar already, we would have had to manipulate that because we won't get that by crossing bars. I'll accept that. The other thing I'm going to do is the range of these bars are only going to go, if I swing around to the back, it's only the back portion. I'll click there and I'll click there to accept the bars. And the reason for that is the engineer specified in this case that these bars are the dominant bars. In other words, they're in layer 1. And when we go around the corner of the retaining wall, those bars also has to be in layer 1 in this side. Now you can imagine if we had used the full thing, over here we're going to have a problem, or yeah, we're going to have a problem that our main bars are going to end up in the second layer rather than the first layer. So we'll stick with this method. So once I've got that, I'll finish off these bars before I move on to the others. So I'll click on the bar. First of all, I've got to take note of my direction of my spacing. So the start is at this end. So what I want to do in this case, Control P to get it in plan view. I want to work as a datum of this bottom line here. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to create an offset. Well, at the moment it's calculating 109. I'm going to push it a bit further to 125. And I'm going to leave that as is, and my target, I'm going to say exact spacing, and I'm going to say instead of 192, I'm going to say 200, and I'm going to accept that. Now, the advantage of doing it this way is that when you generate your drawings, you're getting nice spacing leader lines on your drawing rather than a strange number. And then also, if you work all your bars from a datum, it's easy to avoid clashes because you can move bars along. Now that we've got that, what we need to do is just split this bar up. So if I click on the bar and I head over to the splitter, make sure that I just load my standard splitting. Now a standard splitting on a 20mm bar is, I think it's an 800 lap. It's going to be too much because we only have 500 there. So I'll show you what happens if we lap that bar now, it wraps around and it really makes a strange shape. So what we'll do is we'll click on that, click on the splitter again, and instead of using a standard lap, we'll go custom lap, and instead of using 800, we're going to use 250. Now that gives you a nice cog, if you want, that looks right as well. What we can do now is we can just copy that splitter, right click, copy linear, we can then copy that to the front. And if we say copy, it will also split the bars on the front. So what you end up with now is two L bars, a L bar on top, or a double L as it's called in Australia, and a double L at the bottom, hugging each other precisely as a set. And they are in layer 1. So if we click on this and we go to our visibility and our leg faces, it actually shows you the layer number is 1, 1, 1 on all 4 of the faces. So that's exactly what we want. Now what we can do is we can just repeat whatever we did there on this side, yeah, and we'll deal with the intersection separately. So what I'll do is I'll go again over to more, point input, and I'll start in the back here, and I'll go clockwise again. Now my base is 500 deep, so I can just sort of just make sure your ortho down the bottom, yeah, there's an O for ortho. Just make sure that's on, and click your 500 and click back to the end and return. And once we've got that and we middle mouse, we can then say the span would be, or the guidelines would be from there to there. Now, once we have that, again, we'll click on the bar, just make sure of our spacing line and still make sure that we've got valid input here, and it is valid. So all I need to do is then add a splitter to the back, and we still have our settings from our previous split. We can then split the back, and then what we can do is grab that splitter, right click, copy special linear, and we can copy that to the front face. Copy. Okay, so that sort of takes care of the rebar on this, the main rebar on this area and that area in the bottom one, top one direction. And just to look in elevation, you can see they're in the same plane, so that's correct. So what we can do now is we can pick a dominant side. So what we can do is we can say this one will be the dominant side. So what we can do now is we can grab a point input. We can start on the back top corner to the front, down 500, and then back to the back corner. Didn't accept that. Back corner. I think we just undo that. Undo that again. Undo, by the way, is just the backspace. Just make sure you click the right thing. So if you get a red, get a red bar like that, it means it's an invalid input, and you can be sure that somewhere you didn't click properly. So what we'll do is we'll escape out of that and just try it again. So more point input. We'll start at the top corner here, which is the grid at the bottom. We'll go down, make sure our blue is on, and go down 500, and then come across to there. And that didn't work because it looks like with the rebar sets, when you're clicking when you use your enter to accept the value, it terminates sort of your input of your shape. So what I'll do is I'll just use freehand, go down 500, and then across again to the bottom. And this time it's accepted it. You can see the cyan color, and the span will be from there to there, and we can see the bars are in there. Now if I click on these and I look at the span direction, I actually wanted to start from the other side. So what I'll do is just down our contextual toolbar over here, I'll flick swap ends. You can now see it swaps swaps the ends. I'll make that 125 at the start, and I'll clear the bottom and say okay. Now in this case, I think it's only got 14 bars, so there's no point in having 15 here. So if I make it 14 here, it's still the same. And if I make it 13 over here as exact value, you see we still have, that's interesting. If we make it 12, we're dropping a bar. So okay, the number of bars that can fit in that area then, so let me just go there, will be 13. I always do a sort of a sanity check just to make sure that it works. So that works pretty good. I mean, we'll probably have to juggle that a little bit more when we get to the interface with the others. Now you can see the problem we have here. We've got bars in the same plane. So what we're going to do with these bars is we will crank them to slot in over these and under those pretty soon. And already I can see that we'll probably have to move these bars on a little bit. But what I'll do is I'll put in the others first so we can see exactly where they're going to slot in. But before I do that, I'm just going to finish the secondary steel on this edge. So I'll go for more again. And again, I'll pick our known point, and then down 500. And then back to, just want to make sure that we actually get the right value. And then back there. And this will span from this grid here to the back there to make sure we get those. So now you can see that this ends up being our second level, second layer, top and bottom. And yeah, it slots in nicely into those that we've just done. So all we need to do now is to break these up with a splitter. So if I click on them and I go over to our splitter, it's still got the setting as before. We make sure that we're in the middle of the face. And then what we can do is we can grab that splitter, right click, copy special linear, and we'll go from this corner all the way to the front face corner. And if we then say copy, it will split those bars as well. So you can see what's happened there now. So in terms of top and bottom mat, layer 1 and 2 for this area is complete. All we need to do now is sort out this area and the interface here, the complex interface here. So what we can do here is on this side, again, we can go more point input. And what I'll do here is I will say I'll start over into the back corner top, over to this end, to the bottom, and then back to this. Oops, to this. Didn't snap. To this. Sometimes it's quite challenging to snap. There we go. Snap, and then middle mouse to accept that, and this will then go from this end to that end, and it will place the bars. Now you can already see there that we've got two in the same plane. So what we'll do is we'll switch on our visibility, and we'll click on the top face, and it's shown in 1. We want that to be in 2. And sometimes when you type 2, it doesn't accept it. Just make sure you click the face again and do it again. Sometimes it needs a bit of persuasion, twice. Not quite sure why that is, but sometimes I found that you have to do it twice before it actually accepts it. And then what I want to do is I want to click on these. I want to switch off the visibility of the leg faces and look at my direction. I want the direction to start from the front, so I'm going to flick that around again. And for this one, I'm going to say I'm going to start at 150 and I'm going to end at nothing. And I'm going to make sure that I've got 13 at 200, modify, and that sort of takes care of that. So we can now see how these end up. Now, these bars, yeah, at the moment they're still a U-bar, they're not split in front, which means that if you look at a top bottom sort of, they're lying on top of each other. And that's the reason I wanted to wait, because that is, they won't, these bars need to be split. So what we can do now is we can say, okay, give us a splitter, and the splitter needs to be halfway. Now, it's going to be quite tricky to get it halfway. So I think what we need to do is well, it's actually given it as exactly, if we just look at the magenta dimensions there, I've managed to sort of, with the dimensions, get the right split. So if we go there, actually, I think I just moved the mouse as I clicked it. So we can just move it down a bit. Maybe just make sure that we've got our in a 3D move mode, and then say move linear. I'm going to move that just up to the top temporarily, say move, and then I'm going to move it down 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and down is going to be minus 250, and then say move, and there we go. And now we've got it in the middle of those bars. Although we don't have a line there, we've got it perfectly in the middle. All right, so that's the way you go around. Now, if we go back to this end and we look at these bars from the top, we can now see they sort of offset each other. So now if we can slot these in, break these on the other end as well. So if we come with these and we say splitter, and this time we do have a face to pick the center, and we click there, that splits that. If we now return to our interface here, you can see that it just so happens that all we have to do is extend the bars and not move them around, and they won't clash. So the way we're going to do that is to click these bars, go to our end modifier, make sure we load our standards, And for the type, we're going to select a cranking bar. Okay, we're going to leave it standard for now. We're just going to hover over this line. We go Control P, and then hover over a line. I'm not sure if it's going to pick the top or the bottom, but it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out now. If we now turn around and see what's happened, it's picked the top. But we can clearly see here that what this means is that if you look at the if you click on the end modifier, if you look at the lap, it is actually 800 lap, but it's a lap from the end. So what we need to do is we need to push all of this forward by the amount of the lap. So let's start out by saying we want an adjustment type of end offset, and the end offset's got to be 800 to equal the lap. If we do that now, you can see how it pushes those bars on by 800 millimeters, and then it sort of slots in nicely with the others that are already there. So it comes from the top, slots into the bottom, which makes it a really nice lap there. Now all we need to do is we need to grab this modifier, right click, copy special linear, and then copy it from the top of the base to the bottom of the base. That's 500. Just make sure that is 0 and say copy, and we've got the repeat at the bottom. So now you can see the bottom bars are coming up from layer 1 up, and they slot into layer 2, and they're hugging the others quite nicely. So that's a pretty good solution for that corner there. Now in terms of our toe at the bottom, that will be a quick one. So what we can do is we can say, again, I'll pick the more point input. And for this, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I select, well, I'm first going to reset everything. And then what I'll do is I'll select a 16 tie stirrup bar, and I'll just leave everything as is for now. And then I'll go to the point and then across 500 mils, and then down, bottom corner, back up to the top. That's the shape of our bar, middle mouse. And then the spacing line will be the full length of this base, because I'm making this the dominant side. The other one will stop short. Now once we've got that, the first thing we need to do, if we click on the bar and we switch on our face visibility, we can see in here what Tekla has done is it obviously prioritizes layer by sequence of bar input. So because this one arrived after the others, it will have a secondary layer. So that's now layer 3. We can just click on that layer and make sure that we bring that back up to layer 1, so it interfaces to the top, and the same in the front. If we look at the front, it's now 2. We can just click and change that to 2. So that makes the actual shape of the ligature correct now. It wraps all the way around. Now all we need to do is click on it, and I'll switch the layer visibility off for a minute, and then re-click on it. Is to grab a end modifier. Again, just load our defaults, and this time I'm going to select the 135-degree hook, and I'm going to hover over the edge of the concrete here and click, and that will apply a hook for us. Now if we click on these, we can see our direction. Again, it's using this face as our datum face. So what we can do is Control P, is we can say, right, we can start the offset on the start. Let's pick 200 millimeters to get it off the other one. The other one we can just clear. And for the target, we can say exact spacings, and instead of 30 at 193, we can say 30 at 200. If we now accept that, and we just look at we can see how nicely those ligatures fall in between the other bars with no interference. It actually ends quite nicely as well. So once we've got that, we can just do the other side as well. So in here, we just repeat more point input. We start at the top, bottom, back, all the way up to the top and across. Accept that as the shape, and then for our guideline, our spacing line, we need to just have the internal bit. In other words, we go to the inside face and make sure that it doesn't overlap. So if we turn around, you can see these stop on this face and that stops short on the inside face. So again, on here, we can click on the bar, switch on our leg visibility, make sure that our legs are actually correct. So if I click on the front leg, it's currently 2, that needs to be 1. And if I look at the top, it's currently 3. If I click on it, that needs to be 1 as well. And now that that's sorted, we can switch off our leg visibility. If I click on the bar, I can introduce a end modifier, which is still set to 135 degrees. I can pick the edge of the concrete over there. It will apply the ends to both those legs. And now all we need to do is look at the spacing. So if we look at it, spacing lines there, this is the datum. So that's also correct. And what we can do here is just have a look. And because it's symmetrical to the previous one and the settings are correct, it should be correct. So if we just hover around there, we can see we still have our clash-free ligatures. Now, the only thing to do with the base part now is just the distribution steel in the bottom. Now, what I would do here is, in this case, I will select a crossing bar. So if I pick the crossing bar, and I'll reset my settings back just to flash out any of the settings we made before. And for the bar, I'm going to pick a 16 main bar. And for the target, I'm going to pick a number of bars, and for the number of bars, I'm going to pick 3. I want 3 bars. Now, what I need to do is I can hover over the shape to include all of the leg. And for the adjustment line, the guideline adjustment, I don't want this to put bars across the whole height of this. I'm going to activate the adjust guideline location. It will give you this little guideline indicator here. If I then drag that down to the node at the bottom of the base, that's the only part I want to place reinforcement. I say OK. You can then see that we've got reinforcement only in the nib, and it is actually quite nicely placed in there. We might have to do some adjustments, we'll see now. If I select those bars and I select the concrete and I isolate them just for a minute, show selected, what we need to do is just break that up into a bit. We do have to make some adjustments. You can see we've got a problem there, and I'll show you now what that is. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to the splitter, make sure I load my standards. And then what I'm going to do is split on the front face of the concrete. That will give us a split on these 3 bars that wrap around. I'm also going to go around and split the back face, the short face. Now what happens here, if you split an internal face, it just extends the bars rather than lapping them, and we can clearly see here they're too long. So if I click on this splitter and I go over to the split top, I'm going to say it's a custom lapping, and I'm going to make that 350 mils. So it fits into our 500 beam. So if we now look at it, beg your pardon, if we now look at it sort of from the front, we can now see that the front is lapping by the required lap, and the inner internals is just crossing each other, which is a pretty standard default detail for this sort of thing. Now, on the ends here, obviously we need to introduce more splitters so we can form a U-bar at there. So what I'll do with this is I'll click the bar, go to the splitter, and then just reset our standard, and then hover. Now, if you hover over the bar, if you hover over the concrete, you're getting a dimension off the end of the concrete. But if you hover over the bar, you're actually getting a leg length. So if we just hover over the bar and we go 800, that will give us a U first leg of 800. If we hover over the other side and we pick 800, that will give us a U on this side. Now, if we go to the other end and we just repeat the process again, we've got 800 on the inside and then 800 on the outside. That's done. So if we now look at what we've got, is we've got U-bars on here, and we need to fix up this quickly. We've got lapping on the outside, we've got crossing bars on the inside, and then on the other end we've got U-bars again. Now the issue with this is it's you can see that the bar is actually going over the face. So if I just put on my visibility, the face stops here, but the bar actually extends further. So what we can do to solve that problem, and what I'll do is I'll just switch off the faces for a minute here, is you click on the bar, and if you look at the range line, where's the range line? It's over there. The direction is bottom start, top end. So if we go to the bottom and we say we need 150 in the bottom, and at the top we need a 50, and we force that, you can now see, oh, that was too much. If we say 100, that's interesting. Let me just see if I make that 50 as well. Okay, so if I do that 150 and I do that 50, I must have had the direction wrong. But anyway, you can see there by just adjusting the top and the bottom, 150 at the bottom, 50 at the top. It now brought those bars within its faces, and it splits it nicely now. You can see crossing, lapping, and we've got the U-bar. Now, just to show you what I mean about the leg, if I go click a group within a rebar set, and I click this group, and I say right click inquire, you can see that the legs are exactly 800 millimeters as expected. So it's a very quick way to get very precise dimensions on your bars. Just make sure that you reselect your rebar sets to continue. If we now redraw, we can see all of the bases now nicely reinforced and pretty much clash free. Now for the wall, it's actually quite a very simple process. I'll use the point input as well. My approach to this sort of reinforcement detailing is to um, is to create a big bar and to break it up into what I would like to do. Now, the only thing I've done is, as you can see there, I've created a section on that edge, and I'll go transparent so we can see everything. And the first thing I want to do is I want an intersection between the bottom of the base and the wall vertical. So what I'll do to get that is I'm using shortcuts, but I'm using a construction line. So if I draw from the top, and I can just pull it down, oops, pull it down, there we go. And then from the top on the outside, pull it down. I now have an intersection point there. So what I'm going to do just roughly is I'm going to go more, point input, and under my properties, going to make sure that I've got 16. And what I'll do is I'll just reload my standards because I see I've got some dodgy settings here from previous. And I'll reselect 16 as a main bar, make sure my spacing is 200. And then what I'll do is I'll roughly draw the shape of the bars that I'm going to insert in this wall, and that will include vertical, top, bottom, all the way down, and the other foot of the starter. So that's basically, if you look at the magenta, the cyan part there, that's the shape of a bar I want that I'm going to break up into different components. So once I've got that, middle mouse to accept that, and then for the range again, I will use this side as the dominant side, so I'll go all the way to the front, and you can see now we have a bar that sort of looks like a top hat. And if you can look at that, Tekla's already figured out these other layers of reinforcement in there, and it automatically gave this leg a 3 and that leg a 3, which is brilliant. Now all we need to do is, if I select the concrete and I select the bar and I right click and holding shift and I say show only selected, I can then isolate the concrete in that bar. All I need to do is adjust the legs of this and split those up. So let's start by the leg adjustment here. And the way we do that is with an end modifier. If I click on the bar, go to end modifier, I'll just load my standards in case I made settings. And then for the hook type, I am going to say no hook. And down at the adjustment type under length, I'm going to click that and select I want the leg length, and the leg length I want is 350 millimeters. And then once I hover over this end, it will force that leg to 350 millimeters, as you can see from this dimension. And I'll repeat on the other side, and that will give me the dimension I want. So now I know that my foot is exactly the dimension I want. All I want to do now is split, so I can turn this in an L and that in an L as a starter. So if I click on this again, what I can then do is go to a splitter, load my standards just in case we made settings, and then I'm not quite sure always which direction Tekla is going to pick. So I'm just going to start with a value. I'm going to say I want the split to be on the right side or the left side. Do you want it on the left side? And then I am going to pick the bottom inside corner of the concrete. So if I click there, Tekla will split it. Now, I lucked out on this one. I'm picking left because Tekla has put the split on the left. But if we look at exactly where the bars are split and we look at where the concrete line is, it's exactly where the concrete will start. So just imagine they're pouring the base first and then they're pouring the wall. Normally what they'll have is a 50 millimeter kicker there. So you want that lap to at least be 50 millimeters above. So if we click on the split line and we hover over to the split offset and we put in a kicker of 50 millimeters there, it will just lift the splitter up by 50 millimeters, and now we have space for our kicker. And now if we click on that, click on the splitter, we can now say right click, copy, linear, and we can copy from this corner to the front corner, say copy. Now obviously because that's in the opposite direction, we'll have to click on the bar, click on the new splitter that we copied, and just change the direction from left to right and say modify. And now those are equal. So now what we're left with is two starter bars still one set, the right leg going over, and it's got a massive U on the top here. So now what we can do is we can do the same as what we did with the toe. We can go to our splitter, reset our splitter by loading our default, and then just hover over the bar itself. Hover over the bar itself to make sure that we get a leg of, say, 800. That will split the inside. Hover over the bar, pick 800. That splits the outside of the bar. So that now we have exactly what we intended. We've got a U on the top. We've got straight bars in the front and the back, and we've got L bars symbolizing our starter bars. So if I just redraw, we can now see how that's progressing. So if I kill this this view and I go to our 3D view again, we can now get rid of these two little construction lines. Now we can repeat this process on this edge. So I'll just use another section. I'll draw a section over here. Again, go Control P and then go transparent so I can see what I'm doing. I'll go construction line and I'll draw two construction lines vertically down the front face and the back face of the wall. So I get, and the reason for that is to get the intersection with the bottom of the base. And now what we can do is again just go over to more point input. Our settings is still the same as the original point input, and just roughly pick a dimension here. You don't even have to be precise with that. And then go up to the top, over to the front, down to the bottom, and just pick a leg length and accept that. And then the guide's going to be this time as a secondary, so we go to the inside of the wall so it doesn't clash with the others. Right, so there we've got our vertical bars. So if I isolate that with the concrete, there we go. What we can do is first thing is just check for our leg length, end modifier. We say we want no hook and it's still set to 350. So all we have to do is hover over this side, hover over that side, and that sort of limits our, you can see the 350 that comes up there for leg length. That sorts out the leg length. If we go to split the inside, or we can split the outside first this time, if we go to a splitter, it's still okay. We've got make some adjustments here. We can say we want to split the right, we want an offset of 50 millimeters, and we can then pick the concrete line over here, and that splits that perfectly. And all we have to do is go over here and change it to left this time, and then pick the inside, and that splits the back of it. And that sort of takes care of our starter bars perfectly. And now all we have to do is create our U on the top. If we click the bar, we go to our splitter, and this time just reset all our defaults. And then we hover over the bar itself and pick a 800 dimension, split, go to the back of the bar, pick a dimension, oops. If we just, sometimes it's hard to, get the bar, but just keep on turning until you get a clear face. Okay, that's split the bar, and we can just do a sanity check here. If I pick my grouping again, and I pick this U bars, inquire, we can see 800 and 800 and 350 middle leg. So that worked out very well for us. So the only thing to do with this base now, or this retaining wall, is if I kill that view, and also we can now get rid of our two construction lines there, delete. All we need to do now to finalize this is the horizontal reinforcement in the wall. And what we can do with that is we can go to our crossing bar again. We can just make sure that all our standards have been loaded to default. We can pick our 16 main bars. And then also, I'm going to say a start offset of 150 millimeters from the top and 150 from the bottom. And 200 spacing is good. And then what I do is I'll just pick the shape. Pick the shape. And then again, instead of selecting all of it, I'm going to limit my guide. And this time I'm going to pull the bottom up to the bottom of the top of the base. So you can see between that point and that point is where we're going to place bars. If we now say accept, it will only place bars into the wall area. So what we can do now is we can just isolate that and the concrete, so we can see what we're doing. If we then say shift show only selected, we see the concrete and horizontal bars. And again, just like we did in the toe, we can click on the bar, go to the splitter, make sure we load our standards. We can split that in the front. we can, while we've got the split set to that, we can just hover over this end and pick our 800, split that side, hover over to this side of the bar. Oh, it's actually split the inside, not the outside. So what we can do now is hover over this side, make sure we've got 800. Let me just undo that one. Hover over this side, make sure that we get 800, split that side, and then go over to this. Make sure we've got 800 on the outside, and then what I'll do is do this side also 800. And now the last thing is we've got to split the inside of this wall. And if I hover over the edge of the concrete, that splits it by a overlap. So if we click on the splitter again, we can just go to custom, and instead of having 700, we put in 350, so it doesn't extend beyond the wall, and we end up with something that looks like that. And now if we just redraw our whole model, we can see we have got horizontal and vertical bars on the wall, 16s at 200 everywhere. We've got a base, 20s at 200 everywhere, clash free, and we've got the toe 16s at 200, and that pretty much concludes the detailing of a cantilever retaining walls. It's a fairly simple process, and you can get it very accurately with the minimum amount of bars. Now, let me just do reports, and we will go to perform numbering. So that's all numbered. And now if we click on the concrete and we say right click, inquire, and we say cast unit, it will show us a bending schedule. And as you look at the bending schedule there, we ended up with a very short bending schedule and no non-standard shapes. They're all defined. So it's a pretty good way of detailing retaining walls. Instead of trying to use loose bars everywhere, is create your main bar and split it up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.